Hello gamers, apparently chat thinks I'm bald now. I clearly have a full head of hair. Anyways, we're here yapping. Alice came out and nobody cared. But all seriousness, I want to have this discussion about pull value. Full head of head, of course. I want to have this discussion about pull value as I think as the time has gone on with Zenless, it's becoming more clear of like what units sort of define the meta and what units are less valuable for people to pull on comparatively. And that's really about that, right? I just want to give you my thoughts on where I think you should be allocating your pulls. Generally, if you are trying to, let's say, stay meta or not waste as many pulls, right? And we're going to talk about multiple characters here, as well as dupes and other things like that, vertical investment, because that does matter a lot in this game, considering that they give us a pretty generous amount of pulls, around 120 plus per update. It's pretty good. You have a little flexibility there to pull what you want, which is, you know, nice, all things considered. So, yeah, we're going to start off with Ellen Joe because she's the first limited character. And I have to be completely real with you. I probably should have more tiers, to be honest. Let's just add a few more. Simply for comparison's sake, because we do want to have at least 5 and 4 out of 10. Not because I'm saying there's going to be any units that are in 5 and 4 out of 10. It's just that to like space things out, really. You'll see what I'm talking about. I have this thing I made a while ago, right? A ratings board for each score. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Got the characters I'm highly recommending people to pull for. Regular recommends, decent pull, vertical/niche investments, which are going to be those characters that you would pull after pulling something else, right? 6 is going to be a solid enough character, and everything else below, you pretty much shouldn't be pulling. Pretty self-explanatory. If you do want to read it, it's here, right? This is the current sort of like guidelines that I've made for this sort of stuff. So starting off with Ellen, let's be real here. Ellen is probably the closest character to being a true mid, right? I would put her in 6 right now because she's like good enough. But when you compare her to the other characters that you can pull for, there's pretty much zero reason to pull Ellen. Yes, she's more flexible now, and yes, she's really good. But if you're over here saying like, hey, I want to pull an ice DPS, her competition is Miyabi and Hugo Vlad. Now, Hugo, he's kind of weird where he's positioned being a nuke type DPS. He'll excel in certain, you know, fights and perform worse than others, right? It's going to be fight dependent, which is pretty much everything in Zenless, right? If you've played the game enough to actually know what you're talking about. But I don't know. It's as somebody who has Ellen, especially Ellen without her weapon, right? And, you know, looking into her performance going further on and when you get dupes and, you know, mindscapes and of course her weapon, she's not performing anywhere near the level of the other people. And of course, even with the buff being that she is more flexible, characters like Miyabi are still going to be way more worth your pull because of how they interact with certain stage buffs. And additionally, Miyabi is just that broken to where you would put her that high up, right? Speaking of which, we will actually skip straight towards Miyabi for this reason. It goes without saying that ever since the launch of this game, there has been like a steady power creep. This is kind of the case for everything in gacha games, right? But Miyabi has defined the game and continues to do so. She is by far the best DPS, super flexible, easy to play, outputs insane amounts of damage, and literally does like everything. It's actually crazy. There's a reason why I'm looking at the wrong. I grabbed the wrong one. I grabbed the wrong one. There's a reason why on so many tier lists you always see her placed on the top, and she's just deserving of it. It's that simple. She is just the best DPS in the game without question. Also, I need to talk about this. I didn't realize this changed. Besides the point. Miyabi, I do think, is one of the 3. I'm only going to put 3 characters up here that are actually worth a 10 out of 10. I would recommend everybody to have on their account because she is just that absurdly strong. I don't even need to spend a long time talking about her. She's got solid dupes, really powerful weapon. Of course, there's the whole thing with her weapon comparatively being a bit higher in terms of, you know, ratio for damage gain in comparison to other weapons. But like, that's just the nature of things. They're going to power creep weapons. It's really just going to happen. They're going to be niche for that character, so on and so on. Like, you can't do anything about that. but it's to be said that Miyabi to this day still has the strongest like performance, especially free to play value wise. She's like the only one of the few characters that are even like worth getting a 10 out of 10 rating, where you definitely want to pull for them. Going back though in order, right? Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan is actually going to be a decent pull, right? Now, the thing that affects her value the most is actually going to be Yi Xuan, right? Because Yi Xuan is a direct competitor in terms of what she wants to do compared to Zhu Yuan, right? The reason for this is because they're both Ether DPS. It's very simple, right? Don't got to complicate things. The thing right now is that characters like Qingyi are not so much seen as highly in the meta, right? Like Qingyi her value is quite low because she's boosting pretty mediocre DPS, all things considered, right? Those being Harumasa Asaba, right? Almost forgot his name. Zhu Yuan, the primary ones that are benefiting him, and to some extent lighter, right? But of course, since the game has gone on, we've gotten more alternatives like Trigger and of course Lighter, who have of course replaced these characters in those comps, right? And obviously Lighter doesn't pair with Asaba, right? But that's just, you know, for reference. So it is to be said that, like, despite the fact that Zhu Yuan is going to be on the weaker side, she still performs really well at a free-to-play level and has a pretty decent team variety, because you can still use her really, like, you can use her to a good extent with other characters like Trigger and of course Astra Yao, and of course there's the double or the triple ether comp that I know a lot of people use. I personally don't like it because it doesn't play well with Zhu Yuan, but you have Nicole Astra, who can burst down many bosses even to this day, right? So she still performs better, and this was the case even back whenever the game first launched. If anybody was actually like into like understanding what's going on, everybody was recommending you to pull Zhu Yuan over Ellen. Why was that? Well, it's because Ether was a rare type and everybody was expecting Miyabi, and it just so happened that Zhu Yuan performed better than Ellen, and it happened all the way until Ellen got a buff. Now they're about closer on par, but even then, Ether's still going to be more of a rare type that you do want to have something to counter with, and Zhu Yuan generally just plays well, performs well at a free-to-play level. She's not that strong on vertical investment, but we're talking about like decent DPS. She still hits that mark, being that she is, well, above most of these other DPS, but not quite there to being the apex, if that makes sense, right? She's going to play really well into vertical investment of her teammates, though, right? If you invest in the Qingyi, you can get some extra, like a decent chunk of extra damage out of that. And of course, there's Astra Yao, who's the main target there, where if you do want to invest vertically into Astra Yao, she will help you account wide, right? And so you can keep it pretty free to play by pulling on Zhu Yuan as your obviously Ether DPS, and her teams at least will be flexible enough to where you don't have to, you know, strain yourself in other scenarios, right, to sort of pull what you want. And generally, it's like you can't really go wrong with pulling her. If you want to say that, like, hey, comparatively to some of these newer DPS, she's not doing nearly as well, fair enough, but she's still going to perform at a decent enough level to where it's worth pulling on her, in comparison to where Ellen Zhou has two other competitors that just perform directly better. Your one other competitor being Yi Xuan is obviously better, but Yi Xuan is going to want those characters like Jufufu who to pair with her, and of course Panda, right? All this is to say is that it ties back to how good Astra is, and why she, as you know, this chatter says, is pretty much the highest pull value out of any character, because she'll just make any DPS really, really strong, right? Pretty much that simple. But to focus on Zhu Yuan, the TLDR, to keep it simple, right? Because kind of going all over the place here, is that she's just a solid enough DPS to where she has value, but she's not going to have as high a value as other DPS, right? If you want to argue she's like a 7 out of 10, totally makes sense. But when you're looking at a free-to-play perspective in terms of how much you have to put in to get out of it, it's pretty low and flexible, and you can get a lot of value out of her running her, and she's still going to be meta viable in a lot of stages right now. So she can definitely be there. And even with waning performance, the thing is the Zenless team has been pretty, you know, forgiving for a lot of things, and so they'll probably buff her, if anything, whenever she does get a rerun in the future. But I wouldn't put your bets into a potential rerun. I would just want to say, like, the point is, like, right now, that, like, she's still a solid DPS, just that there are going to be better characters right? Just pull value wise, it's still like a decent character to pull, right? Moving forward, Qingyi. Now, the thing is, Qingyi is simply there to vertically invest into 2 core comps, that being Zhu Yuan and Asaba. She's not seeing a lot of performance in these other comps, which is why she has to go in a 7, simply because that's what it is, right? You're not pulling her to sort of overall boost your account. You're pulling her for these burst DPS characters, being Asaba and Zhu Yuan, right? Obviously, there's a few other burst DPS characters, but they have better supporters, that being, one's like lighter for all the fire characters, and, well, again, lighter for the ice characters, because he's buffing both of them. And so Qingyi is just put in a position where she's on these other teams worse than the best option, and to where you can also just run double support on a lot of these teams, to where there's no real point in having Qingyi in the first place, right? Again, it's going to be matchup dependent, and it's going to matter on whoever is the main DPS in the team. She's one of the characters I would argue that actually would want a buff. Her less so in comparison to someone like Caesar, but still to be said that Qingyi right now just isn't buffing the top tier characters, and so the reason to pull her is really only to vertically invest into some of these other characters, right? That's really about that. It's unfortunate, but that's just where she is. Caesar. This one is the really unfortunate one. See, if you had asked me back when Caesar came out, really, really high. They could buff her by letting her faction bonus with the element. Yeah, there's ways to like give micro buffs to Qingyi to make her like way more valuable, but that faction problem you bring up, I think, is more of an impact of a few other characters that I'll get to. But yes, Caesar. If you asked me back like months ago, whenever Caesar came out, I would put her high up, because we didn't have any like major buffers back then, right? We had, obviously, like the 4 stars are really good at buffing. Don't get me wrong, like this game has some cracked 4 stars, but we were super restricted on teams, and the thing that Caesar allowed you to do back then was to have a flex stunner / buffer, right? And it worked really well. Now we have multiple other stunners that do the same thing but better, and multiple other supports that just provide more buffs. And because Caesar, unlike all of those other supports, can only buff one person at a time, she comes into the problem to where there's no point of getting her. Because why would you pull her over Yasuo? Why would you pull her over Astra? Why would you pull her over Trigger? Any of these other people who are not only more flexible, but will provide better benefits for your other teams. And that's the issue. Caesar only buffs one target, among with other issues like her hold basic not doing anything. Her ultimate's just literally like the worst ultimate in the game. It does nothing for... It just does nothing. Like, why does she only buff her days value based on if they have a shield or not? Which is only like robots. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why? And the worst part about that is the robots aren't even weak to physical. So it doesn't even make any sense. Like, this character has so many problems. Like, this one, she actually just needs a buff. And it is ridiculous to say, but genuinely, I think she might have to go in the true mid. Now, I know there's going to be people that are thinking like, oh, well, the rise of physical, right? Because of Alice, almost forgot her name. Alice right now, and how you want other physical characters, so on and so on. I don't care. Instead of pulling Caesar, you can pull Yasuo. Instead of pulling Caesar, you can pull Trigger, Lighter, anybody else. So much of Caesar's kit is mixed between the fact that she's supposed to be able to stun and support, but she does both of them worse than many of the other supports we have. I mean, look at Sukaku. Sukaku's doing 1,000 attack, bunch of ice damage %, ice res down if you have her M4. There's another one. I forgot. Oh yeah, combat attack buffing. Because of her being a support character, she can get, different weapons. What can Caesar do? 1,000 attack and 25% damage bonus? It's almost like all these other people do like way more buffing. Like, Caesar's engine has more value than Caesar. Unironically, it kind of does, because you can put Caesar's engine on another defense character like Panda or Seth and get more value on those other characters. That's besides the point. And like, The thing is, Caesar actually has some decent dupes, boosting her attack up by another 500, and then you get all type res pin. But it just comes to show, like, it's mostly because the other Sons of Caledon members are not, I mean, they're either supports, like Lucy or Lighter, or they're not seen as favorably in the meta, or of course they want the AoE buffing, which is Bernice, right? It just doesn't make any sense to pull Caesar in context of any other unit in this game, right? She's giving you one target buffs that are mediocre when you compare it to other supports. The best thing about her is the fact that she will completely tank whatever hit. So like a nuke can drop and she can just erase that nuke because of her shield gate, right? Her shield will stop whatever that biggest hit of damage is. So she can keep you alive in tower. But here's the thing. You don't have to push that high in the tower. Most players can just push to like floor 10 or whatever, get all the rewards they need. So you don't even need the shield gate for Caesar. Doesn't make any sense to pull for this character whatsoever. Like, she's okay, don't get me wrong, I have her, you can get use out of her on teams. Again, swap stunning, the best thing about her is the goon buff. She does make your characters look really good in battle. She oils them up. God, you got me distracted. Look, Caesar has a lot of problems with her kit, and until they get fixed, there's no reason to pull this character over pretty much any other support character at the end of the day, right? You don't even need to push the eye in the tower to actually make use of her shield most of the time. And here's the thing. The moment you, I don't know, get good, right? Don't have a skill issue, why would you run her, right? Now, of course, again, skill issue players can still make use of Caesar, right? Don't get me wrong. Of course, she's going to have a decent amount of comps, but generally, why would you run her over really anybody else? Like, that's the main thing. It doesn't make any sense. Like, sure, if you don't have like, if you don't have any of the other supports to run in a Zhu Yuan team, of course, it makes sense, or whatever the next Rupture character is. But there's going to be a point in time to where the game's going to progress far enough and we're going to get another Rupture buffer, right? That will just invalidate Caesar in that role as well, right? There's really no reason to pull this character over anybody else. And yeah, I know, they'd be like, oh, would you look at this? Here's Piper. Piper can synergize off of Caesar, blah, blah, blah. Guess who's better and why they put him in every team? Lucy, because AoE buffing, same thing, right? You're going to see it in literally every anomaly comp, right? I clicked on the wrong one. Oh, guess what? There's Lucy, right? It's like, everywhere you want to run Caesar, there's a better alternative. And even the few like teams like, let's say Zhu Yuan, like Zhu Yuan, you don't have Qingyi, you can run Caesar, like it's fine. But why would you pull her over Qingyi in that case? Right? It just goes back to that question. Like, the value for Caesar just isn't there. And because of her ult being bad, her stun being, you know, fight dependent, obviously, I don't think I can put her anywhere besides true mid. To be honest, doesn't make any sense. She's just mid as is, right? And that's why you even see her on this list being, using Pride Win as reference, right? Being Fraud Watch, right? I don't know if they, Lucy Caesar adds to the watch list. All these support agents are outliers in our current tier list, underperforming compared to their peers. Right there, right? If Caesar was performing better, I could justify putting her higher up, right? But as things are right now, there's like no reason to pull her. Like, genuinely, there just isn't. Yasuo just came out, and look, if you're a new player, you're watching this video, right? You probably missed Yasuo, because Yasuo just went away. But guess what? Pick up Miyabi, pick up Astra, pick up Yasuo on the rerun. You'll be fine. You literally just don't need Caesar as is, right? That's like the main thing. If like, I can go on and on. I made a whole video talking about character buffs and Caesar, what they can do for her. They need to do a lot for her, to be fair. There's just no reason to pull this character whatsoever. Even if you're trying to fill slots, you might as well just wait until that rerun comes around. And the only thing that could change this is if they buff Caesar, right? Astra Shield doesn't oh, you mean Caesar? Yeah, that is another thing. Yes, even inside of tower for your perfect clear bonus, Caesar doesn't prevent that. Keep that in mind. So if you're trying to do like a no-hit run, for whatever reason, they made it to where shields don't count towards that. So it's still going to count as a hit. So you want to keep that in mind, right? It's not going to just like make it to where, oh, no-hit runs are easy now. Like, no, it's still going to count towards not getting your demon medal is what they're called. So yeah, that's another thing. Like, look, I can go on and on. The point is this character is just ultimately mid. All right. I could say this is like the biggest Caesar defender because I was talking about how valuable she was whenever she first came out. But that is to be said that like she just didn't age well, right? Power creep hit the fan. And that's just it's what it is, right? If we I don't even want to try to make like what ifs. It's really just the fact that she isn't AoE buffing. So many of these modern comps run duo DPS being these anomaly comps, and the comps that don't, they have better buffers, right? So really, the only ways to like quote unquote fix Caesar is to either buff her or to like get M2 to where she's gonna beat out the other supports. But why do that when you could just pull the one support and already do better than the M2 Caesar? Like, there's really just no reason to pull this character. I'm spending too long talking about Caesar in particular. Look, maybe I'll do a dedicated video talking about the fall off of Caesar, but like, I think we should keep going forward. Caesar, it's whatever, mid character. Bernice. Y'all might hate this one, but hear me out. Bernice is a 7. Why is that? Vertical / niche investment pool. I can contextualize this in the simple fact that Viven exists. These characters, Bernice is a 6, let's be honest. Look. We can talk about Bernice's energy issues, her meter management issues, as well as the functionality issues with her swap in, not allowing you to immediately go into a double fire blast, which is a whole nother thing. Like you really need that defensive assist to get the reduced cost on your burn, but the fact that you can't quick assist into the reduced cost fucks you up, and it feels weird playing her. That's the point. Based on purely objective performance, Viven is the same thing as Bernice, but better for like all these characters. Jane, though, a character that's more built around being a hyper carry for a physical character, gets massive damage out of Viven because Viven is going to scale based on the anomaly damage that the other character is doing, right? All that Bernice does is extend the burn timer and do off-field burn. That is it. She doesn't do anything else, right? The only teams that are going to make advantage of that is going to be disorder teams. And while anomaly characters are typically played disorder teams, why are you picking Bernice over Viven, who is going to do a bunch of burst damage that you can play in the same way, right? You play Viven in the same way. You swap on her with defensive assist, gain stacks, swap out back to your other character. Viven is just the same thing, but better because she's doing more damage and she's going to scale with these other damage types that give you a bit of interplay. And this, of course, because of them being anomaly characters, all play into Yanagi, who is the problem child of anomaly because they decided to make that character buff disorder damage. We'll get to that. The main thing is that Bernice, besides the fact that she herself is what is making the burn dot actually do damage, because otherwise it wouldn't do as much disorder damage. That 3-second extension on her additional is what makes the burn disorder do damage. She's not really doing anything else, right? You can run her in a comp that's like Bernice, Miyabi, or Bernice, Viven if you're going to be crazy. But in every single anomaly comp, and this also has to do with element type matchings. Again, everything in this game matters based on matchups, right? For whatever reason, the devs were insane and were like, let's make every electric weak fight also resistant to fire. And so even though you want to use Bernice with Yanagi, they shaft your damage by making all these electric weak enemies resistant to fire. I don't know why they do this, but because of that reason, that makes Viven even better, because none of these electric weak enemies are resistant to ether. It's ridiculous the position that she's in. But realistically, she is going to be a more niche pull, because she is just ultimately going to be worse than these other anomaly characters. Like, why are you pulling her over Viven? Hell, even in the Miyabi team, Viven's better, because guess what? You can run Nicole. This is where Nicole is going to get glazed all the time. You can run Nicole in this comp and destroy everything. You're going to get good burst damage, and that's really about that. Obviously, there's Astra Yao, and hell, there's now Yasuo who's going to make those comps even better. That Bernice really isn't giving you that value, right? Now, there's the whole thing with anomaly buildup that, to be honest, don't really care about. The main thing is that Bernice is there to apply her fire, screw her off, right? She's not giving you any extra utility like a character like Viven, who's going to give you a bunch of iframes as well, right? Bernice doesn't give you that same benefit, right? She's going to be able to get hit during her combos. It's like, there's a bunch of nuance to the scenario, but the main point is that it's just kind of like Ellen and Qingyi and Caesar. There is a better option than Bernice in every single comp, and that is Viven, right? Her ideal environment is like Pompeii, where she gets defensive assists and he's fire weak. Yes, that is true. And again, like this is gonna be a matchup thing, but you're not gonna see me, or at least I would hope you didn't see any people. The value proposition for Bernice is just not as much as Viven. Vivian's just a better character. It's pretty much that simple. Like, why would I tell somebody to go and pull for Bernice over Viven, who's a character that is going to be cheaper for you to build, and you don't have to worry about actually playing the character because of some kit issues, right? I don't know. And again, I don't want to make this video too long going on to each of the nuances of each character, but it quite simply is just that Viven is better, and it's going to be more worth your pulls because it's going to be the same thing that I say with like all these other characters, right? If you take a screenshot and draw a line with who they pair with, right? They pair with the same people. You pair Viven with her. You pair Viven with her. You pair Viven with her. There's, you know, 2 other anomaly characters down here that I didn't take a screenshot of. But I guess you pair the same character, but you get what I'm saying, right? Bernice is doing the same thing, right? And these 2 people down here. But here's the thing. If you're like, hey, Gold Demon, who do I summon for? Bernice or Viven? What reason would I have to tell you to pull for Bernice over Viven? Can't think of one. I can tell you the reason to pull Viven over Bernice. She's doing more damage. She plays better. That simple. Look, I'm not trying to hate on Bernice. Again, I have Bernice. I have her invested. I play her with all these comps. Vivian's just a better character. It's that simple. Yanagi. Actually, we're gonna save Yanagi for last. Lighter is an easy 9. He is buffing all these top comps, being all these fire and ice comps. There's multiple meta fire and ice characters. He buffs the best character in the game. He's giving a lot of buffs. The biggest flaw in him is gonna be the fact that his light cone, or not his light cone, his W engine provides such a big upgrade over the other options, but that's really not that big of a deal, to be honest with you. We don't got to talk about a lot about Lighter. He's pretty fine as is. Asaba was free, and even then he's true mid. This is just a mediocre DPS. Really nothing to be said there. I would not pull him over any other electric DPS, especially the fact that, like, well, Yanagi exists, which she's like the 3rd best DPS in the game. We're gonna get to her. All right. Now then, I kind of skipped over characters because the way it's ordered on the list. I didn't realize I skipped over Jane. I'm actually gonna go straight to Astra Yao just because. Do I have to talk about this character? Do I have to? Guys, she gives you healing, free quick assist, and some of the strongest buffs in the game. I don't think I need to say anything more about this character. This is the arguably best support in the game. Say arguably because there's one more. Pull this character. Just do it. It's that simple. Even if you want to argue that she's not like perfect for some of these other comps. Guess what? Guess what's better than having 1 Astra? Having 2 Astras. All right. That's all you need to know for the next character that's going to be in an out of 10. All right, Jane Doe. Here's the thing. Jane got better because of another character. Doesn't mean I'm going to put her higher than these other options. She's still going to be a more niche pool. Even with the rise of physical, the main thing is that Jane in the modern era is, despite the fact that she does play more like a hyper carry, she still wants one of these other characters to perform really well. She wants a Viven, she wants a Bernice to perform at her highest because that's where you're going to get the most damage out of her. That is to be said, she is going to be a better DPS than some of these other characters if you have those other options. Like if you have a Viven, I would say, yeah, Jane's going to be more worth a while for you to pull because she's going to do a lot of damage with her, right? But standalone, the value isn't so much there. And again, as I said, none of these are going to be like exact ratings. You can make arguments for them being higher because of where they're positioned, right? It's like, oh, well, if you're not going to pull Bernice at all, it's like, yeah, I have Viven. Well, it makes sense to pull like a Jane or something like that, right? But Jane standalone herself is not going to be that high. She's not going to give you that much value. You do need to pair her with another anomaly. And this is the downfall of most anomaly characters with the exception of Miyabi. But yeah, the main thing is that Jane standalone her performance isn't that well. And her performance was waning until Yasuo, right? And Yanagi, that is true. Yes, Yanagi, of course. Yanagi can be ran as a hyper character because, God, this video is just becoming Yanagi glazed. They made that character broken as fuck. What was I saying? Oh, right. Yeah, Jane's performance is greatly impacted by the introduction of another new character. And I think since we're getting through all the anomalies and it's at the very end, it's time to talk about her. This is the third and final 10 out of 10 character. This character is so broken. It's actually insane. I cannot believe they made this character this good. They just said, what if we made Astra, but like better for anomaly characters? Insane. Insane. This character is going to be one of the best characters for you to pull for flat out. Dupes, weapon, whatever. You don't even need her weapon to be good. She's perfectly fine. And in fact, in a lot of cases, the 4-star weapons actually beat out her signature weapon. But when you start vertically investing to this character, my God, does it get stupid, bro. Let's just take a look at one of her dupes real quickly, because this is insane. So you get 30 energy regen at the start of battle, and this does matter because that is extra quick assist, which means extra buffs, and well, you get extra you get less field time because if you do one of her her quick EX skills, immediately goes to the next character because they made that character busted, right? And then of course it'll retrigger investigation shown. Nobody cares about that. But then this M1 is already reducing the res of the enemy by 10%, which is this huge damage increase whenever you put it into a team context or if you're fighting off element, which is massive. And then she also increases her already massive anomaly and disorder damage multiplier, which if you use her in a team that is like Yanagi, those characters will double dip into these multipliers and just do insane damage. Crazy. And then her M2 gives you free chain attacks, right? Which is, free damage, free anomaly buildup, free chain attacks. I actually have no idea. Like, this character is ridiculous. Like, you want to talk about characters to pull for? It's these three right here. But mainly these supports, they are insanely busted. And Yasuo is also like broken as hell with anomaly characters. And speaking of it, we have our two final anomaly characters, which her M6 is the most broken. Oh, yeah, it gives you a like 300 something more disorder damage. Yeah, it's basically if you had two Yanagis on the same team. And it also gives you, you know, some extra stacks. It's actually insane. So for our two remaining anomaly characters, Alice and Yanagi. Alice and Jane are like the same thing. They're like the same thing. Granted, Alice right now is probably going to perform a little bit better than Jane, depending on different factors. But really, pull Yasuo. Pull Yasuo. Again, you can make flex arguments if you're like, oh, performance, blah, blah, blah. But like, realistically, if you look me in the eyes, I'm like, should I pull for this character? No. No. I would pull for those three at the top before I pull for these people down here at number 7, right? Because guess what? You pull for those three, you can still do full teams with those characters. You got to pull multiple other characters for these guys. And then also these characters are just better, right? It's pretty self-explanatory. And I could spend all day yapping about it until we get to this character. All right. So for those who know, the knowers in chat, Yanagi is the problem child of anomaly characters. She sort of defines what every other anomaly character does because they're like, let's put force disorders and disorder buffing all in the same character. All right. you know, she's the character where it's you press go and get $200, right? This character, with her, with the exception of Miyabi, this character probably has been the best aging and most valuable character on your account. I'm not going to put her at 10 though, but she's the closest one to being 10. This character is just insanely busted. You don't even need another anomaly character. She can be ran as hyper carry. She can run with anomaly characters. She's running with the best characters in the game. Literally all of them, right? And then even like you'd make any arguments you make for Miyabi is the same thing you do for Yanagi over here. Again, you take the screenshot of who she's being used with, right? You do the, oh my god, I clicked the wrong button. God damn it, hold on. Simping tool. Anomaly was a mistake. This character was a mistake. You take the screenshot of this, right? Boom, 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 boom. Wait, that's the wrong one. Brain damage. Boom, boom. And then, I don't know, all of these supports, because you can benefit from literally everybody in the game. Hell, even Qingyi to some extent. You can do it with Sakaku in some comps, right? Like, this character is just a complete mess, and they are absurdly broken. They're damn near 10, but these people are just that much better above her, I would say. This is the third best DPS in the game, without question. She's performing fantastically. She's super flexible, easy to play. Like, what more can I say about this besides the fact that, oh, the other characters are just slightly more broken? Like, this character did not need Yasuo. Yasuo needs her. Like, I kind of want to put her in 10, but like, look, all I'm saying is that they did not need, Yanagi does not need buffs. Before we even talk about any other character, Yanagi does not need a buff. Do not touch this character. This is insane. Imagine having Yanagi as an option and still being unusable. Shit, that is Seth. Why are you dissing Seth? Anyways. Yanagi's insane. Could make a whole video dedicated to why she's the real best aging unit in Zenless now. I mentioned that because if you remember 1.0 Zenless. Oh boy. All the people telling me that Grace, all the people thinking that Grace is the best aging unit in the game. And that a couple people that were like mad at me for talking about Rina. Listen. We'll have a conversation about that later. But yeah, Yanagi is just insane. I really cannot talk about how busted. I'm gonna just move on, bro. This character's busted as hell. I don't even need to do this. All right, Evelyn. Well, probably not a 9, more like an 8. The thing is that they keep making fire characters weird. Evelyn is the only fire DPS character that like actually matters, right? Because Bernice is an off-field. We're not gonna talk about Orpheus and Seed that much, but like, it's like I don't know. There's just nobody else. Like the thing is with Evelyn is that she's going to be a better DPS than characters like Zhu Yuan, so obviously you can put her like up here. But you are gonna want a character like lighter, of course, right? She can, of course, flex of a few other characters, obviously like Trigger and whatnot. Excuse me. And so like it makes sense to put her either way up here, but if we're talking purely like pull value, it's that you don't need to pull this character if you have enough of these other stronger DPSs. So that's all I'm saying, right? Like, she is really good. I can understand putting her higher. But me personally, it's something right here. I know previously I would have had her up here, but we need to see how her performance is going forward within context of characters like Orpheus, right? Now, granted, Orpheus is in a really gray area, so like, and she's not out yet, so I can't really like say too much on like where she's going to be performance-wise and like pull value-wise. But it should be like decently high comparative to some other characters. It's gonna be more niche. But really it's like Evelyn's our only fire DPS at the minute that's like really super relevant. Bernice has her own issues in terms of functionality. And so it does make sense, but you have to be a good player and have stuff like lighter to really get the most out of Evelyn. And so if you're like, you know, gun to my head, like pull Evelyn, like probably wouldn't as much as a character like lighter, like Yanagi, so on and so on. I'm open to hear arguments otherwise, right? Don't get me wrong, very good. It just goes back to the same thing. Like these other characters are stronger. They're going to give you more value for your account overall. And that's really about it. You know, lighter, you just need Astra because you can just slap Nicole on there. That is true. Yes, you can just pull Astra, slap Nicole, slap some other support on there, and do just fine. But lighter is going to be one of your biggest upgrades for her because of his massive, you know, ice res down and damage percent bonus that you'll get from him, of course, right? Sambi. Okay, lightning DPS going to perform better on par some of these other characters, but going to be worse than Yanagi. That much is true. Really don't need to talk there. Trigger. Trigger actually has some good pull value. This will matter more depending on who's on your account because you won't get the most use out of her unless you do also have another character to pair with her. Like that goes for a lot of these characters, right? It's going to be matchup dependent, like I've been saying. But Ambi isn't going to perform her best without Trigger. And Trigger works well with a whole bunch of characters. You can do Yanagi, Miyabi Trigger, right? If you even want to. Obviously, these two work together with either Yasuo or Astra Yao to make their, you know, their mono comp, whatever you want to do. Trigger is going to have a lot of value, but it's another one of these options where you don't need to necessarily pull her because you have alternatives to run that are going to be just as good, or you just don't need her for account flat out, right? Her animations are broken. Can you source that for me? Because I don't know about her animation still being broken. I thought they fixed that. Point is, Trigger is just a decent all-around buffer. Not much to be said there. Solid, better than some others, but not as valuable as the people above her, pretty much, right? Hugo Vlad. Why would you pull him over Miyabi? That's it. Literally, that is it. He's good. Solid DPS. But why are you pulling him over Miyabi? That's really the only argument there. Yishuan. Yishuan's going to be a 9. I will say, I think I kind of underrated her beforehand. But she is arguably the best DPS in the game, assuming you do have her full setup, being obviously Panda and Jufufu. They're going to really make this character excel. This character is a very fantastic DPS, but her playability is only slightly below Miyabi. Again, it's one of those things where it's like high floor, not as high ceiling. Now, of course, if you want to talk about dupes, Yishuan with high dupes is going to perform better than Miyabi, of course, don't get me wrong. And there is a lot of tech to be had with this character, but most people are not going to get the full potential of this character because they didn't pull for Jufufu. And even without Jufufu, she's still going to be really good. But I would still say if I'm telling somebody to pull for something, I'm pulling those characters up there before I'm pulling for Yishuan. Just saying, right? Astra, Yasuo, Miyabi, right? That's really about that, right? Yes, this character is pretty much just a bunch of iframes. She's got parries, you know, a lot of CC, stuff like that, a big AoE. Very nice character to play if you actually put effort into learning her. But when, you know, push comes to shove, we're talking about like raw performance. Miyabi performs a little bit better, especially at a free-to-play value than her. And that's really about that. I understand putting her at 10 out of 10, but from my point of view, I don't really think she is 10 out of 10 worthy. It's simply because those characters at 10 out of 10 are just that insanely broken, right? It's that simple. Jufufu. Jufufu was a character I initially overrated. And I think every time I've gone to do this, I've dropped her ranking. Whenever we were first learning about her, I had her at a 9, and I moved her to an 8 on a follow-up video. But as time goes on, it becomes more and more apparent that she just feels kind of bad to play and also really isn't worth your pulls unless you're pulling Yishuan. Because, like, what team are you using her in that plays really well that isn't a Yixuan. And by the way, they literally put partner Yixuan underneath her because that is the only place you're using her. Obviously, you can use her as a secondary stun, but the things with stunners is that their impact is only there for the sake of stunning. So if their impact stat doesn't give you another stun, why are you running them? That's the thing. Really, I don't know why you would play her in any of these comps, to be honest with you. This one definitely doesn't make any sense, because Trigger's defense down on her weapon doesn't affect Yixuan. I don't know what's happening there. But really, where are you running this character? Her entire performance is brought up by Yixuan, and I can't justify pulling her over someone like Lighter, over someone like Trigger, because she's only for the one character. She doesn't play as well with the other ones because she lacks a quick assist, and yes, she's a swap stun, so she does kind of take the role of Caesar because she is doing a little bit more for those other comps by giving you extra chain attacks or extra ultimates, you know, generating you more decibels, getting aftershocks so she can proc different set effects, so on and so on. But really, where are you running this character outside of Yixuan comps? You're just not, right? Like, she truly is just a Yixuan bot. And so she has to go into the niche such vertical investment pool. Like, that's all you're really, really doing here. You can use her with E, but it's not better than Nicole. That's the other thing. It's the main thing you got to keep in mind with a lot of these characters in their rankings is that their ranking is going to be impacted on the fact that we have really strong 4-star options. We have Lucy, we have Sakaku, we have Nicole on these other comps that are really, really strong on those specific teams, right? Nicole, the one's getting the most value out of literally everybody if you can play her properly. And so for those other teams, why don't you just run like Nicole or another buffer that works, that at least plays better with them compared to Jufufu? Like, yes, Jufufu is giving a lot of buffs and her, you know, additional ability is very nice, but like, why are you pulling this character outside of Yixuan teams? Like, you're not really doing that, you know? Like, her stun isn't nearly as good as any of the other stunners, by the way. Like, her stun is very lacking, all things considered, especially because she's off field 90% of the time. You can't even on field her to get really any benefit because her damage is lackluster. It's like, I really don't know what the value is for this character outside that team. And as you may have noticed, we've reached all the characters. Now, of course, I will hear arguments for moving the position of any characters, but these are just like my general thoughts on the position of every character in the game in terms of like full value, right? Obviously, I do think some characters do need more of dedicated time put into them and thought, and talk about like, are they truly worth pulling? But if you ask me like right now, it'd be something like this, because not every character is created equal in terms of, you know, game balance. It just is what it is. Gotchas are, you know, well known to power creep things. Renet 10 out of 10. Shut up. And this is where I would put it right now. And this is where I would advise people to allocate their pulls, right? For each character. The things you want to keep in mind is multiple things. You want to keep in mind matchups, how the character plays, what they're doing for you, what are you losing not running them, what do you gain running them, how many pulls you got to put into them, right? There's obviously more things to put there, right? And one of those can be bundled in just opportunity cost of the character themselves, right? Stuff like that. But in gacha games, right, you're limited on number of pulls. So if anybody's asking me like, should I pull this character, blah, 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 this is what I would say, right? Yes, Asaba was free. He's just bad comparatively. And he, you know, if you're a skill issue player, you're not going to get value out of him. You want to keep in mind, ultimately, what feels good for you to play. I would always say that if you don't care about meta, pull who you want, but then figure out how to maximize that setup so you can have the most fun playing the game and not suffer, right? So think before you pull, really. That's the only thing I can say. Just pull Astra. That is true. Let's be honest, Little Bunny is not 7. You don't think Alice is 7. Why? Why? 10 out of 10. Oh my god. She's better than Zhu Yuan? Well, that's why I said, like, you can make an argument for, like, some of these characters to move up. %. You make an argument for someone to move up. Like, I'm just saying, it's like, when you try to, like, you want to manage your pulls appropriately so you don't, like, you know, completely shaft yourself. And again, I would say you're better off pulling those characters at the top there over these other characters, right? If you're free to play, she buffs Piper's performance, so her team is cheap. You know what, to be fair, maybe I should look into Alice more. I will say that. So if you want to say, like, put her higher, I totally understand. But this is just, like, my thoughts generally on what characters I think are worthwhile to pull for, right? You got your 10 out of 10s, not much to be said about them. Everybody knows how broken they are. I could go on and on about, like, every small detail, what makes them, you know, the best in the game. That much is simple. You have your 9 out of 10s, they're just not as performance as them. I put her above Zhu Yuan. Really? You guys are saying put Zhu Yuan lower? Obviously, Yi Xuan is better, but, like, are we really saying that we want to drop Zhu Yuan? I mean, I get it because Qingyi's there. As I said, like, it's a weaker performing DPS. So oh, that's not an order. That's not an order, by the way. Yeah. So like 8. Fair enough. Fair enough. This is not in order. I would just say it right there. But yes, all the characters in NA are going to be your super reliable DPS characters that, you know, get the job done, but not necessarily better than the other options, right? I forgot Qingyi existed, to be honest. Most people do. Most people do. 7 is like outdated older niche units. Yes, you're right. Yeah. I think we can work with this. Do we have any other arguments here? Because like 10 and 9 are pretty much set in stone. Like there's like no arguments for those guys. That one's obvious. And then you got Eve, G1, Alice, Orpheus, Ambi, Trigger, and Hugo Vlad. Actually, did we move Trigger up? Yanagi 10. You don't want to, but you know it's the truth. Look. She is really, really good, but... Put him under Caesar? I don't think he's that bad. I don't think he's that bad. That would be I know she's the best lightning DPS, but like... You know what? We'll do it. Yanagi is broken, and she's like... She's one of those brain dead characters, if you will. You don't, like... Miyabi, you can just, you know, give her to anybody, and anybody can play her. Yanagi is basically the same thing. As I said earlier, every argument for her is the same that can be made with Miyabi. So, I guess we can make that change. Before Yasuo, maybe, but Yasuo just fixes all her problems. That is true. Yeah, Yasuo is just so broken, so yeah, it kind of makes sense here. I'm trying to think about Trigger. The thing with Trigger, you don't play her in that many comps. You get more niche comps. That's like the... Yeah, it feels more like a luxury. like, yeah, you can use her in almost everything that's like meta relevant, but it's not better than like their core teams. Like, you're not gonna run this team over you're not gonna run Trigger over Yuzua. I say your name wrong, Yuzua. You're not gonna run Trigger over Yuzua in this team. It's more like a fun option. Also, I know I kept saying her name wrong. That's on me. I keep saying it like an A. It's easier like that. Yeah, I think Trigger's good. Hugo's the same thing. Yeah, these are about the same thing. Ellen is just, yeah, I don't know. The buffs helped her out a lot, but like I'm not pulling her over anybody else. And then yeah, these guys are just like fucking mid as hell. Yeah, I think this looks pretty solid, all things considered. And I know some people are gonna ask like, oh well, what about Seed and Orpheus? These are my predictions for them. We will see going forward. But I can tell you right now, from the information I have, Seed is pretty tied to how Orpheus exists, right? You want Orpheus for Seed to do what Seed is gonna do, right? That's the main thing there. And then Orpheus is sort of like a trigger type unit. You get a flex option for buffs and stuff like that, right? We'll see what happens going forward. Maybe these two will swap positions. Maybe they'll be in the same tier. Blah blah blah. But there's not really much to be said there going on. Trigger is busted just because the devs didn't design enemies to account for range units, so you can just use Zhu Yuan Astra Trigger. I do use that team. It's pretty fun. And yeah, you can just kite around the enemies. So yeah, I think that's that for pull value. Again, I am curious what people's thoughts are about this. This is a pretty long video, but I could go more into detail about each particular unit on here, right? Talk about, you know, the exact things, but just like generally, if you're asking me like, hey, who do I pull for? Something like this, Loop with the best fire DPS, whatever. Yeah, we'll move on, right? Don't forget to like, subscribe to me on Twitch. Tell me your thoughts down below. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.